Another loaded show coming your way on today's Philadelphia Eagles Now. And I know this move going from Sean Desai to Matt Patricia as the Eagles defensive coordinator was applauded by the fans. Doesn't seem as though it's a move that the Eagles players like. A lot of Eagles players have been defending Sean Desai. And I have some more thoughts on Desai's demotion. There were games where I thought Sean Desai did a couple of really good things. Going up against that Miami Dolphins #1 overall defense, I even said in the aftermath of that game, this is a game that a Jonathan Gannon-led defense never has, because I don't think that the Eagles defense under Gannon was going to be able to make the in-game adjustments and to be able to come up with a defensive game plan to stop a potent Miami Dolphins offensive attack. And then against the Kansas City Chiefs, the Eagles go into the locker room at halftime down by 10, but then after that, they pitched a second-half shutout against Patrick Mahomes. That was another moment where I was like, Sean Desai deserves his flowers, because in the Super Bowl, second half of Super Bowl 57, Patrick Mahomes had one incompletion against a Jonathan Gannon-led defense, and it came on a throwaway as Philadelphia could not get a stop for the final 30 minutes. But with that being said, the Eagles during the gauntlet of the stretch, which kind of started with that Dolphins game, Cowboys game before the bye, and then Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, Dallas, they got outclassed. And schematically, when you go back and watch some of the film, a lot of what Sean Desai was calling, a lot of the personnel packages he was using, the scheme, it did not make a lot of sense. And I didn't think that Desai was putting players in a position to succeed and to tap into what they do well. And the Eagles' tendencies as a defense were way too easy for quality offenses to identify, exploit, and then attack. Kyle Shanahan had a field day against this Eagles defense. Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott able to do the same. Josh Allen had a really, really good game because everything that the Eagles were doing on the defensive side of the football became very predictable, and schematically, again, it just didn't make a lot of sense. Now, on that same note, let's also defend Sean Desai once again. He was given a defense that lacked a lot of talent. The linebacking core has been awful. The defensive line that had 70 sacks last year hasn't produced the same sack numbers. There have been a litany of injuries in the secondary, and James Bradbury has become washed overnight. The Eagles have had interchangeable parts in that secondary because of injuries and because of inconsistent play. And then at that safety spot, you had to trade for Kevin Byard. Reed Blankenship suffered from a couple of injuries. You're having to plug and play a couple of younger players within that Eagles defense. So that is Howie Roseman to blame in that regard. But against the Seattle Seahawks and going into the game, the Eagles were 32nd in third down defense. They were last in red zone defense during that losing streak. And against the Seahawks, I thought with Matt Patricia calling the plays, the Eagles were a little bit better on third down. They were a little bit better in the red zone as well. And I like some of the changes that Matt Patricia was able to make. I also like seeing a little bit more from Nolan Smith and Eli Ricks and Keely Ringo. I thought Sidney Brown, outside of a couple of missed tackles, also played well. I want to see more from some of those younger players. And Eli Ricks was used outside by Patricia. He was used on the inside by Sean Desai. So little intricacies like that ended up, I think, helping this Eagles defense have a much better performance. Now, it wasn't against a Josh Allen, a Dak Prescott, a Brock Purdy 49ers team, and a Patrick Mahomes Chiefs team. It was against Drew Lock and the Seattle Seahawks. But the Eagles were able to get off the field on third down, and then they ended a streak of 10 consecutive touchdowns in the red zone for the opposition by playing a little bit better football in the red zone as well. Now, Philadelphia Eagles couldn't close the game out under Matt Patricia as Drew Lock went 92 yards, targeting James Bradbury on every one of his completions. So I think this is one of those things where there are a lot of things and a couple of people to blame. The more I thought about that move to Patricia, I just think that he's a better defensive coordinator, and I think that Sean Desai's inexperience, which was a little bit of a concern going into this year, ended up rearing its ugly head. But I also think it's interesting how players have come to the defense of Sean Desai. Brandon Graham said this, stuff had to change, and of course, I know that Coach made that decision, and Nick Sirianni came to us, he talked to us in front of the group, and he made sure we knew what was going on. Desai, man, the dude is still a good coach. Went out there, handled his business. You couldn't tell, even though I know he was probably hurt on the inside, you couldn't tell. He was very professional about it. We still go up to talk to him, see what he sees, talk to him about what he sees for the week and what he expects and how he expects them to attack us. Another good ear to lend. And it's another good ear to lend. And I imagine that Sean Desai was very upset about getting demoted. I mean, nobody who's competitive, who actually cares about their job, wants to get demoted. At the same time, though, everybody's saying, he's a really nice guy. He's a really good coach. Sometimes I don't really care about that. Like, according to Jeff McLean, the players really liked Sean Desai. But the players also noted that he doesn't really carry himself with a lot of confidence, and that rubs some players the wrong way to a certain degree. For a guy who you'd like to see some fire from, where he's lacking that confidence, players able to sniff that out. Thought that was an interesting report from Jeff McLean. And then here's what Jason Kelce had to say about Desai. Now, this is coming from an offensive player, of course. Sean Desai is a fantastic coach. It's been awesome having him here and bouncing things off of each other, going up against him in training camp, figuring out his defenses and trying to having that competition with each other of blitzes and different fronts and how are we attacking it. I have so much respect for Sean. Obviously, the organization, Nick felt in the best interest of the team. He was going to move forward with Matt Patricia calling plays, but that doesn't take away from any amount of respect that I have for Sean Desai. I can tell you right now, I know he's a talented coach for whatever reason. Nick felt like it was a change that he wanted to make, and that's the way it goes. Look, I like the hire of Sean Desai. The Eagles, because of the Jonathan Gannon tampering, missed out on Vic Fangio. I would have loved to have seen Vic Fangio as the Eagles defensive coordinator. That Dolphins defense has been playing really, really well this year. And Sean Desai is a Vic Fangio disciple, but he simply was not getting the job done, and that's why Nick Sirianni made the change. The players, when you read the quotes that we just passed along on the show, when you pass along some of these sound bites after the game against the Seahawks, they seem surprised. They seem caught off guard and not fully on board. And this is one of those risky moves by Sirianni where if it doesn't work out, you run the risk of losing the locker room. So do you agree with the decision to demote Desai? A for agree, D for disagree. What do you think down in the comments section? Treat it like a Sports Talk Radio call-in line. We'll get to your questions coming up around the corner, but first, today's Eagles Now is sponsored by Game Time. If you're looking for last-minute tickets, download the Game Time app. You're guaranteed to get the best seats at the lowest price guaranteed, and the prices drop as the events get closer. And what I like about the Game Time app is that you can use it for an NFL game, an NBA game, Major League Baseball, but also concerts, comedy shows, theater events. You can also see where you'll be sitting and what you'll be seeing from your seat so that you don't get an obstructed view and get caught off guard by that. This is also of note right here, the flash deals on the Game Time app. You simply swipe to unlock, and that's where you see some of these really good deals on the Game Time app. Eagles-Giants on Christmas, Eagles-Cardinals the following week in Week 17. Those are the two home games left for Philadelphia on the home slate. But you can go to road games as well. $20 off if you download the app for free and then you use our promo code EaglesChat. That's the code EaglesChat for $20 off. Let's start to take some questions from our loyal subscribers. Dragon Chase, do you think that Frank Reich would be better than Brian Johnson? I think that Frank Reich would be a better play caller. He'd have a better feel for the game. I think that Frank Reich would benefit this Eagles offense just because he has a little bit more experience. And I think that Brian Johnson and his lack of experience as a play caller at the NFL level has hurt him a little bit. But I'm not sure Frank Reich, given his age, given the fact that Nick Sirianni came up under him, is going to bring a lot of creative elements and creativity to this Eagles offense. And that's what I think this team really, really needs right now. Mason Carr guy, do you think there is a chance for Big Play Slay to be back for the postseason? Yes. Darius Slay is expected to be back before the end of the regular season. Philadelphia did say that when they announced that he underwent arthroscopic knee surgery. This is not expected to be a long-term injury. I know Joe Giglio went on 94 WIP and said, I think we've seen the last of Darius Slay. I actually disagree. I think he's going to come back before the end of the regular season, and I think that he's going to be your number one cornerback when he is able to be back and healthy. Dennis Designs, $2 super chat. What about Zach Ertz? So I was reading an article from the Philadelphia Inquirer that Zach Ertz and his people are hoping for a reunion with the Philadelphia Eagles. The only issue, are the Eagles willing to go about a reunion with Zach Ertz? I think one of the problems with this Eagles offense right now, in addition to the lack of creativity, is them being a little bit too predictable. For instance, Jack Stoll is not a pass-catching option at that tight end spot. Every time that he's on the field, you know that he's going to block, and he's not going to leak out to run a route or run a route in general. Now, Dallas Goedert is a very good two-way tight end who's a great pass catcher and blocker. If you had Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, those are two pass-catching options for this Philadelphia Eagles offense, which I think makes your offense a little bit less predictable, and you have a little bit more creativity, and you add another weapon for Jalen Hurts. And for Zach Ertz, he's such a smart player where what he lacks now in athleticism and speed, and he's never really been a burner. He's never been a twitchy athlete. He's able to take a look at the defense, scan the field, and he knows where to go to find the soft spot of that defense. Whether it be man, whether it be zone, he knows where to go, and he's a really good route runner. If he gets on the same page with Jalen Hurts, and they did play with one another back in the 2021 season before Ertz was dealt to the Arizona Cardinals, maybe it just gives Jalen Hurts another security valve, an easy read, an easy throw, a third down target to help move the chains a little bit, because the third wide receiver spot has been a massive glaring issue for the Eagles. They're getting nothing from Julio Jones. They're getting nothing from the stiff that is Quez Watkins. I frankly think that Olamide Zaccheaus should be playing a little bit more, but if you had Zach Ertz as that third receiver who can play tight end, line up out of the slot, and win some matchups. Paul, $10 super chat to one of our super chat MVPs this year. I agree. Desai doesn't have the experience yet where Patricia has the experience, and we would have held them on defense if it wasn't for Bradbury. That's what's so unfortunate about what happened on Monday night. The Eagles did play a pretty good game defensively, and I don't put that loss on the Eagles defense. Yes, you could be a casual and say, well, they gave up a 92-yard drive to Drew Lock. Yeah, but the Eagles offense had multiple opportunities and countless opportunities to end the game, to extend the lead, to put Seattle away. This is supposed to be an offensive-driven organization with all of that offensive firepower, and they couldn't put a simple 3 points on the board, let alone go on one of those long touchdown drives that I think really could have benefited this team and won them the ball game. China! Don't know if you spoke on it already, but what did you think about Jalen Hurts' comments on commitment? So I did talk about that on Monday's Overreaction show, and I thought it was interesting from Jalen Hurts to be that honest. Sometimes he's too measured at the podium, and he's too measured and mundane during some of his interviews. You're the quarterback of the organization. Sometimes I want a little bit more, and that was one of those moments where I thought Zach Berman, who followed up multiple times on what Jalen Hurts said, did a really good job of trying to press the issue to find out and identify what exactly he meant. Now, I don't know if Jalen Hurts was expecting that, and I'm not sure he had a plan when he did say that, because he was like, I don't have a dictionary in front of me. I don't really know what to say. I wish Hurts would have had a better plan there. But it does make you think a little bit. Like, what is Hurts talking about where players aren't bought in, where players aren't committed? This is a team that made it to the Super Bowl last year. This is a team that still controls its own destiny. You can win the NFC East. You can get the number 2 seed. You can try to get your revenge against San Francisco if you make it back to the NFC Championship game, because I think the Niners are going to be back at the NFC Championship game. You have an opportunity here to compete for another Super Bowl in this finite window where you are at the peak of your powers as an organization and you have all this talent on both sides of the ball. If I'm a player on that team, I'm doing everything that I can to be committed, to buy in, to figure out our issues so that we can try to get back there, because I understand year over year how quickly things can change in the National Football League. This is a golden opportunity for Philadelphia. You don't have opportunities to start a year 10-1 for 2 consecutive years, and if you have players just trying to cakewalk, thinking that they're just going to make this run to the Super Bowl once again and it's going to become easy like it was last year, that's not the reality of the National Football League, and that's why Philadelphia is facing this adversity right now, because they've gotten punched right on the chin and they haven't responded to it, and they're finding out right now it ain't that easy. So, interesting stuff from Jalen Hurts. I like the honesty. I just wish he expanded a little bit more on it. China, appreciate that. Fly, Eagles, fly. Subscribe today. If you want daily updates, daily shows on the birds that are all informative, entertaining, and insightful, this is your go-to spot. Hit that sub button right now.